Welcome to the Simply Jenna podcast. This is Breaking the Stigma, a special mini-series. Join us as we interview different people and talk about their journey to wellness. If you have thought about getting support but were afraid, or are afraid of what others might think, this series is for you. Stay tuned for some really good stories. Thank you for joining us. This is a very special, exclusive mini-series that we are going to be doing, and we are so happy that you're here with us.
Yes, thank you for joining us. This is the first episode of hopefully a few where we will be focusing on the goal of breaking the stigma on mental health and seeking mental health and getting that support.
Yes. So our method of doing that is by talking to a group of people that have gone through seeking out their own supports and learning more about their journey to get there.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, and these individuals have been gracious and courageous enough to share their journeys with us so that we can start this conversation and really go down the path of exploring why this stigma around getting mental health support exists and what we can do to change it.
Yeah. So we'll talk about what their process was prior to seeking the support that they got, what getting the support was like for them, and what their life is like now after they've gotten the support they need.
Yeah. I think it'll be really helpful to our listeners to hear that and to hear the different strategies that maybe they used as well.
Yeah. So for this very first episode, we have a guest, and he lives here in Calgary with us, and he has ventured on his own journey of getting the support, and we're going to have a conversation with him and how it's impacted his life. Thanks for joining us, Matt. Nikki, do you want to get us going?
Sure, that sounds great. So Matt, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I'm 38-year-old engineer, father of three, who's employed in the oil and gas industry in Calgary, Alberta. I live outside the city, about half an hour away, and I commute back and forth every day.
And where do you commute to?
Commute to downtown Calgary.
Downtown Calgary. Yeah. And you have 3 kids?
Yeah.
What are the ages of your kids?
I have 2 boys, 10 and 8, and a daughter who's 4.
Oh, awesome.
The boss.
Yes,
Yeah,
that's right. As she should be.
Yeah.
So what kinds of things do you guys do, like in your weekends or your time off when you're not busy working?
So we have a bit of livestock at our place. We have 12 cows, we have some sheep, and we have a bunch of chickens. So that keeps us quite busy on weekends and during the week. And then all 3 kids also play hockey.
Oh, wow.
Right beside where we live there, yeah. It's busy.
That is busy for sure.
Yes.
And are you involved in the kids' hockey at all?
Yeah, so I coach the boys' hockey team, and then we just shuffle my daughter back and forth to the rink.
Okay. That's awesome.
Yeah.
It's brave. It's very brave.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. So you've got a pretty busy scenario going on there then, sounds like.
Yeah, there's always something on the go. Living in wonderful Canada, weather always brings us nice treats like months of minus 40.
Yeah.
So that requires extra attention around our house. Dealing with animals, as well as commuting, increases commute time back and forth. So it means less family time.
Yes.
It's harder on the kids, my wife and I. So
Yeah.
Of course. And when COVID hit, were you, while we've been doing this whole quarantine and isolation thing, have you been working from home at all, or do you still go into the office, or?
Yeah, when COVID started, we were one of the last companies, I would say, downtown that was actively pushing people back to home. But now that once it hit in the second wave, everybody was forced to work from home, which includes myself.
Yeah.
And the kids were at home. We have a 1,500 square foot bungalow. So we had 3 kids at home, me at home trying to work,
Yeah.
on conference calls, kids are running by. And then you add in the cold weather where they're not able to go outside towards December, January, it made it tough.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. I know everybody's lives just totally shifted and everything got turned upside down. And we're all forced to figure out how to live in this new way now, right?
I never thought I'd be begging to go back to the office.
You and many, many others, I'm
Yes.
sure.
I think the good news is that everybody is easier on each other, though, knowing that we're all in the same situation, right?
Yes,
So if you
yeah.
do have the kids running by, I think people are a little bit more understanding than maybe what they would have been in the past.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's become sort of comic relief in our conference calls.
Yeah, exactly.
Mute yourself. I can hear your kid.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. Okay, so as we mentioned sort of at the beginning of this episode, we're going to be focusing on mental health and why it's important that we focus on mental health and having this conversation about making sure that everybody's mental health is good and in a good state. So kind of along those lines, we wanted to cover a few different questions with you today, Matt. And one of the first questions is, so how would you describe your general mental health state? And I'm talking about before you ever got any kind of professional help. How would you kind of describe it?
So, sorry, you're asking me prior to
getting any
any
kind
counseling,
of,
what was my mental health state like?
Yeah.
Interesting, I guess is the best way to put it. I can't even remember, to be honest with you.
Okay.
So it was, it's confusing, it's stressful, it's all of those things all at once, everything wrapped into one. We had family pressures from both sides. My wife and I, we have 3 kids, we have work, we have all these things.
Yeah.
And it's never easy. Like, I don't think having 3 kids or 1 kid makes it any harder or less difficult. It's just that it's all stress and the situation. Mm-hmm. So for us, for me specifically, I can't even remember what it was like, to be honest with you. I just remember feeling overwhelmed.
Right.
That's the best way to put it.
Yeah. And I think that's a common or general sort of concern that a lot of us live with on a daily basis, right? So then what, I guess, caused you to think about getting help when you first made that step of, okay, like this, something has to change, or was it just a general feeling, or what kind of led you to that moment of actually actively seeking out the help?
So I had an incident with my family, and that's kind of what pushed me over the edge. I remember leading up to it, it was, like I said, you just feel overwhelmed, but it was one of those things where I never thought, being a confident person, like I'm very confident myself, I don't have any issues with anxiety or anything like that. It was just that I always thought it was something I could just handle, and that's how life is.
Yes.
I can deal with this.
Yeah.
It's not that big of a deal. You have kids, you have a job, so what? So does 5 billion other people in the world.
Yeah.
Why is it so hard? Why can't I just fix this myself?
Right. Okay.
And that's where maybe like the scientific background came in, was like, well, I have a problem, let's try and find a solution. So you just keep doing this. But I wasn't realizing what the problem was, I think, the whole time. And I just kept Band-Aids every time.
Yeah.
And it wasn't getting me anywhere. And it kept getting worse and worse.
Absolutely. So. Yeah, I know that makes a lot of sense. And I think, again, that's a common solution that a lot of people experience. And I'll look to Jenna to share a little bit more on that, of why people generally, what causes them to take that step of seeking help. What have you heard in your private practice?
I think the general blanket statement is that you're realizing that it's interrupting your daily life, and whatever you're experiencing is that you can't be your normal productive self. So there's something that's getting in the way, and maybe you've visited the doctor, you visited the chiropractor, you've, seen a naturopath or whatever it is, and you've checked all these different avenues. That's what I've usually found with my clients, is that people are going down all these avenues, typically that their benefits cover or what they've heard from their peers. And then they come along to this end of the road where they're like, oh, maybe I should talk to someone about what's going on with me, right? So I think that I think the overall consensus is that there's some sort of disruption to your daily life or your professional life, and you just aren't able to perform the way you usually would.
Okay. And so for you, Matt, then how did you go about finding help and getting the help? Was it somebody that you knew of, or did you do a Google search, or how did you go about finding?
I had a recommendation from somebody, and they were vetted. This person said, this other person is excellent, this counselor is excellent, they're exactly what you need. And I believed in them, and then I went to see them. Okay. And I think the hardest, going back to that thing about making a decision as to when do you actually do it. The hardest part for me, no offense, was that
None taken yet.
the hardest part is it kind of seemed like BS to me at the time.
Right.
For sure.
Because it was like, what are you going to tell me that I don't know already?
Yeah.
Right? How is this going to make me any better? Me going to sit on the couch and telling you all my problems that I'm going to walk out of there fixed. Well, I didn't believe in that. And I struggled with the fact that there's nothing to it. It's not rocket science. So why do I have to go do that? You know, and that's like Jen had just mentioned, you have to check all these boxes and stuff. But sometimes it's that. Sometimes it's the fact that you just don't think that it's going to do anything to you.
Yeah.
Of course.
It's just, like I said, it's BS.
Yeah. And story of my life as a psychologist is that, I encounter that quite a bit is, people saying, well, what are you going to tell me that I haven't heard before or that I haven't read in a book or seen online that's going to change what's happening for me? And I think that that's a very common thought process. So thank you for speaking to that.
Yeah.
No problem.
Yeah. No, I think it's great that you're honest, because I think that is a general conception, and part of why we're having this conversation is to illustrate that actually isn't the case, and hopefully you're going to share that with us too from your own experience. So,
and to normalize that thought process.
Exactly, that too.
Is that I think there's a lot of people out there that think that and still believe that.
Yeah.
And hopefully the people that are wondering, they will be more inclined to reach out.
Yes, definitely. Okay, so I guess you kind of just touched on this, but your general feelings about getting the help, you weren't convinced that it was going to help you. Was there anything else that you were feeling sort of after you made that phone call or you set up that appointment? Did you feel nervous? Did you feel excited?
Oh, yes.
Skeptical, obviously.
I was super nervous.
Yeah.
I would never sugarcoat it. I remember walking up to the door of this lady's house, and I didn't know what to expect. Like, because of there was so much doubt in my mind that this was actually going to do anything and actually change anything in my life. I was so distracted by all my other stuff I had going on. I was like, this is such a waste of my time. I could be doing so many other value-adding things right now rather than sitting here talking to this lady that doesn't know me.
Right. Yes.
How is she gonna tell me what I need to change and what I need to do, because you don't know me. You don't know what I'm going through. And that was, I still can remember that feeling. Yeah. And then you get down there and it's like, wow, this is crazy.
Maybe it actually does help.
Wet discharge coming from my eyes.
There's a reason why there's tissue boxes in every therapy room.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yes, no, I think that's spot on. I mean, that probably is a common experience for most people. So then I guess my next question was going to be, did the experience meet your expectations? And if it didn't, what was different about it?
So I guess going back to what I was just saying, I didn't really have any expectations. My expectations were get through this, get on with it. Say I went and saw this person, and then I'm done with it.
Right.
And I can go do what I think is right. And which it wasn't. And it was amazing. It was honestly like, I got into some stuff and she started asking questions, and it was like I couldn't answer them because it was a tough place to be.
Right.
So at that point I was like, okay, there's obviously something going on here, because this shouldn't be happening. Yes. Yeah. Like, you should be able to ask somebody a question and them answer, and them not have to feel like so uncomfortable like the words can't even come out of your mouth. Yeah. Right? Like, how do you get to that point in your life before you go see somebody? Yeah. You shouldn't have to wait that long. Yeah. So that was for me, was the big the light in the sky, or whatever, however you want to put it. It was wow, I really need to be here. Yeah. And you're there for 3 hours and you don't realize it.
That's excellent, though. Yeah. Because I mean, that just it validates that, you made the right choice in taking that step and being courageous enough to do that. And it takes a lot of courage to get there. Yes. Right. So then how, when you left that day, how did you feel?
I felt like I had a lot of work ahead of me.
Yeah.
I realized, like I said, when I was in the session, I realized how many things I had to cover, how many things I had to go through, how much work was in front of me, because it's not something you can just fix. It's not like a light switch. It's practice. It's every day. It's all day. Every scenario you're in, whether you're dealing with coworkers or your kids or your parents or siblings or whatever it is, it's everywhere you go. And for me, that was the hardest part, is because I didn't have to fix one specific thing. I had to fix everything. I had to change my approach with everybody that I was dealing with. But the second I did it, it was instantaneous results.
Yeah.
It's just me practicing to be like that all the time, but I saw the results right away. At the same time. So the first meeting I had after there, the first conversation I had when I left there, I saw that it was a different outcome than it normally would have been. So I saw it right away. I was like, wow, this is amazing. It's just the practice came from me having to do it all the time. And
Okay. And so when we're talking about maybe taking that first step of going into a first session, and what can you share in terms of what that first session looked like? Like, was it a lot of talking? Was it a lot of question asking? What was your experience with that? And
for the record, before we get into that, there's a lot of people that know me prior to me going there that would have never believed I would have went.
Yes.
And so I'm not like, I'm a big guy. I'm very masculine. I grew up in a very masculine household. It's hard for people like me to go to do something like that.
Yeah.
But in saying that, when we got into the session, it was just talking. So like exactly like we're doing here.
Right.
Tell me a bit about yourself. Who are you? What are your kids' names? What do your kids do? That kind of thing. And like, why do you think you're here? And those leading questions.
Okay.
And they just direct you right where you need to be. And it wasn't hard. Like, it wasn't uncomfortable. It wasn't like when I spoke about the questions being uncomfortable earlier, I didn't mean like specific questions. It was me not feeling comfortable to answer those questions.
Right.
And that's where I knew something was wrong.
Yeah.
So I think that for me being in that first session or whatever you want to call it, it was a huge relief when I left. I was like, wow, like my life is going to be different. My kid's life is going to be different. My wife, my family, everybody around me will be different because I'm going to help everybody by changing myself.
Okay. Yeah.
So.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. And so you had your sort of initial session where you had maybe that exploration of what was going on for you, and you had that chance to kind of talk it out. What did your sessions look like after that? Was it more of the same, of like these really great conversations, or did they shift at all? Or
yes, initially the sessions were more about kind of an update from where I was the last time. Maybe there was something specific we had to work on, and then we would review what the outcome was. By the end of it, I haven't been in about a year now. And by the end of it, it was more about, I would bring in specific examples of things.
Okay.
So we evolved from this great big, wide base to narrow in on certain things.
Okay.
And that, for me, that's what I needed.
Right.
I know everybody's different. Everybody goes there for different reasons. But for me specifically, that's what I needed.
Okay.
And now I'm at that specific point.
Okay.
So I don't go see that person anymore, but I have means to other help.
Yes.
With somebody that I trust. And that's who I use now for those specific examples.
Okay, awesome. And so can you share with us then maybe some of the specific strategies that you learned about, whether it's in relation to your work or in relation to your family, like your home life? Like, did you give us some examples of some of the things that you learned?
One of the best things I got out of there, and I use it every day still, was she said to me, we talked about the pressures of working in oil and gas, especially right now, is not easy. I mean, no job is really easy, but there's just added stress. There's media. There's all these other things that are going on in the background. So when you have a bad day at work and you come home and the kids are at home, if you take 3 seconds before you walk in the door and just, and put a smile on your face, your entire night changes with your family. The minute you walk in the door and you're in a bad mood because you had a bad day at work, and everybody gets it, everybody has bad days at work, but just smile for 1 second when you walk in the door and it changes your entire night. To me, that was something that was so powerful because I do have a lot of bad days at work. It's stressful. Somebody cut you off in traffic. You had a flat tire. Your truck broke down. Whatever it is, it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, you're going home to your family who loves you. And the most important thing is being happy to be around them. And that was so powerful for me.
That's amazing. And it's amazing how simple, and Jenna talks about this a lot in her practice, but what a simple practice that is and how life-changing it can be, right?
And how easy it is to implement in your life. Like it's a very specific strategy that you say, okay, I know every day I can commit to this. And it's just something so simple to put into your life. And those are the strategies that I love.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, so you mentioned earlier that it's been a while since you last got any help, but you have somebody that you sort of check in with regularly. So how did you sort of come to that decision to say, okay, I'm going to shift the kind of support that I'm getting? How did you make that decision, and what influenced that for you?
I noticed that, like I said earlier, I was going there for more specific reasons, and I noticed a big change in my family, more so than anything with my kids. Everything from discipline to happy times to everything. I changed my approach with them all the way through, and our lives have been so much better ever since. Okay. So for me, I've had a lot more success at work working with different kinds of people in different departments and everything. There's lots of different personalities, and that's where I was struggling. Those are the two main avenues I was struggling with. Yeah. So for me, once I saw a lot of success there, I was like, okay, let's take a break. Let's see how it goes. And I'm not saying I'm done by any means. Yeah. I'm just saying at this point in my life, I feel good. I feel confident. And if I would never hesitate to go back for 1 second.
Right.
Yeah. I guess the message. I don't think you're ever done.
I agree. Yeah. Absolutely. And Jenna, you probably have some thoughts on that as well.
Yeah, I think, Matt's example is such a good example of the course of therapy over a lifetime, right? Is that once you've developed that relationship and you know that person is there, you can take what we would call like a therapeutic break, and you go and live your life and use the strategies that you learned and implement them. And there's going to be times where the strategies don't work or they stop working. And you can always go back and get, a booster session or, re-engage for a couple months to get new strategies based on what's happening in your life at that time. Because our lives do change and we have different situations. I think for the most part, people get really good strategies to start as a baseline. And then, like I said, as maybe life changes or shifts, then it's a good idea to go back. Once you've built that relationship, it makes it easier to go back for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so, Jenna, then what would be your advice to our listeners in terms of them maybe taking that first step of seeking help? What do you recommend people look for when they're looking for somebody, or for a practice in general, or
Yeah, so there's a lot of factors, and I think what I've learned, over the course of my career so far is I think clients do well when they feel really comfortable in the room with somebody. When you feel like it's a very natural conversation and you feel like this is a comfortable and safe place for me to be. So there's so many factors that go into that. And there are also so many therapists that do their work in different ways.
Right.
So for me personally, just for example, I'm very much I'm going to sit in the room with you. Let's just talk about life, and then we'll do the work probably without you even knowing you're doing the work. So that's my style. There's other styles where they'll take notes and they'll, ask you very specific questions, very specific strategies. So there's lots of different types of therapists out there, and don't just assume that the first one is the best one. You might find somebody that, fits a little bit better. And also maybe over the course of your life, you might find that you need a therapist that's using different strategies or has a different way of operating, and that's okay. So don't ever feel like you're married to one person for the rest of your life, and to feel free to explore, because there's lots of good therapists out there.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's really good advice. And so, Matt, just to get back to then, you had said before that, you're at a good place right now, after your experiences of getting help. And so like, how would you sort of compare and contrast your mental health from where it was before you started getting help and then where you are now?
It's a tough question. It's a tough question because, like I said, I can't remember what it was like prior to me going there. So for me, I don't know. I guess the biggest thing for me is my relationships with everybody around me. That's how I judge how I'm doing.
Yep.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if I'm having a bad day, like I said, I'm a big guy. I'm very intimidating. So when I have a bad day, everybody knows.
Yes.
And it's unfortunate, and I don't mean to come off like that, but that's how I come off. And I can tell by the response of those around me.
Right. Yeah.
Is that I don't get the same feeling back from them. So I know, okay, something like you're off.
Yeah.
Something's got to change. You got to change your approach. Why are they like that? Why are they thinking like that? And that was something that I never cared about before, I guess. Right. Is a good way of putting it. Is I didn't care what they thought. Oh, we're going to do this my way, and that's it.
Yeah.
And I've come to learn, like, no, I have to listen to the other people. I have to think of what their concerns are.
Yeah.
And why are they responding the way they are? What can I change to help this?
Right.
Yeah. Big driver for that was I wasn't getting anywhere with a lot of people.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I would try and hammer down and push through, and they would just resist just as hard as I would push. Mm-hmm. So for me, it was I needed to change my approach, and that's what I do now, and that's my gauge.
Yeah. But that's fantastic though that you've been able to, what I'm hearing in that is the ability to even know that you needed to make the change, right? Like that in and of itself is such a massive step to take, to say, I acknowledge that this needs to change. Yeah. And that, there's a lot of work that goes into just getting to that point, right? So that's awesome. Okay, so now I want to just shift gears a little bit and talk about this whole piece around, because this is sort of our theme for these sessions around stigma and the stigma of getting help and the stigma of mental health. So why do you think, Matt, there is this stigma around getting mental health support?
Because I'll go back to what I said at the very beginning, because a lot of people think it's BS. That's why.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So I play hockey rarely. There's lots of farmers in the dressing room, and people aren't sitting around talking about their mental health in the dressing room.
Mm-hmm.
Guys are having beers or whatever. It's not something that comes up in conversation, but it should. Mm-hmm. I don't know how you're going to get there, but I think we're making a lot of strides. One of them is people talking about it. Mm-hmm. I'm not embarrassed about it at all or have any shame or anything. I tell people openly, yeah, I go see a therapist. Mm-hmm. Like, really? What? Can't believe that. Mm-hmm. Yeah, of course. Mm-hmm. Why aren't you going? Mm-hmm. Is the question I ask them back. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I thought about it, and it's inconvenient. It's too far away. Mm-hmm. I'm too busy, whatever, blah, blah, blah. The excuses go on. And now that I'm sitting on the other side of the table, being the person that was judging everybody before, it's incredible. I wish that it was almost mandatory so people could see the benefit in it, because it has to get to that point almost before people will do it. Mm-hmm. But going back to your question about stigma, yeah, it's terrible. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I'm so unfortunate that there's so many people suffering, and all they have to do is just pick up the phone and call somebody and go down there and see them. And
it's such a simple fix.
Yeah, yeah. That's right.
Or it can be a simple fix.
It can be a simple fix.
Yeah, it can be, absolutely. Yeah. And so why do you think the stigma is there specifically for men? Because we all know that specifically for men, there's this hesitation to get that kind of help.
Because I don't need that.
Yeah. I know better.
Yeah, exactly. I don't have time for this. It's a waste of time. That's why.
Yeah.
I was the same way. Especially in industries where I've worked in mining prior. I work in oil and gas now, construction. You have a lot of men in those industries that don't have the time of day for it, and they think it's just a waste of time.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Jenna, your thoughts on that same question. I'll pose the same question to you. So why do you think the stigma is there sort of generally? And then why do you think it's there specifically for men?
Well, I definitely agree with Matt. And I think that, being a professional in this industry for the time that I have, I do think like I've encountered it with my clients and people that have walked through my door and people that I talk to also in my private life when I tell them I'm a psychologist and they look at me and they're like, okay, like, what do you do? Read minds, right? And that's always the response I get. And you know, like there is a lot of time and effort that goes into getting the education that we do and specializing in what we do and seeing the results. And like Matt said, is that if people could really internalize that, really it is just, you know, a phone call or, you know, booking a session online and just showing up, just walking through those doors, right? It can change your life. And yes, for men, I do think that you know, there is that, for many reasons, years past, and what we've gotten to is, people thinking that, you know, there's a weakness associated with it, that you're weak if you need to get help, and how could you not know better, and who's going to know you, you know, better than yourself. So yeah, I think that there's a lot that goes into the stigma, unfortunately, for men and mental health. But at the end of the day, if you do just pick up that phone or look online and book that session and show up, your life will change, right? So
I think, I'm sorry, I'm just going to cut in here for 1 second to build on that. One of the things that got me there was that they said, if you don't do it for yourself, do it for your kids.
exactly. Yeah.
So that's something that was so important to me, is that if you're a man and you want to take care of your family and whatnot, then do it properly. Do it for your kids and your wife, as opposed to doing it for yourself. Yeah. Really, it'll be about you in the end anyway. Yes. But if that's what it takes to get you there initially, then think of it that way. Say, I'm doing this for my kids, or whatever. I'm doing it for my wife or my girlfriend job. Or whoever, or my job or whatever it is. Yeah. And that's another way to view it. And that's what helped me get there. Yeah. Was that there's nothing more important in the world than my kids, so I'll do it for them.
Yeah. 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 No, that's perfect. And thank you for saying that, because I think that'll help a lot of other people who are stuck in that same mode of thinking. Yeah. So that's excellent. Okay. So then, and maybe you just gave us this piece, but I'll ask it to you, see if there's anything else that you want to share in terms of, if you could give one piece of advice to leave with our listeners regarding mental health, what would it be? And Jenna, I'm going to ask you the same question as well. So think on that one and let me know what you think.
One piece of advice for me is just do it. It's worth every second. There's nothing more important. There's no work that's more important. There's no chore or job or game or whatever it is that's keeping you from going that's more important than going. It can't be, because it's the rest of your life. It's the rest of your kid's life, your girlfriend, your boyfriend, whatever it is. That's who it impacts. It impacts everybody around you. And that, like I said, it's the most important thing you have to deal with. So deal with it.
Awesome. Thank you. Jenna.
That's going to be really hard to follow. Yeah. I think I just want to speak to, you know, this thought process of psychology and it being BS, right? So if it helps you, think of us as a medical doctor and equate it to that, is that your mental health is just as important as your physical health. And it will be life-changing, and I promise you that.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay, well, let's end on that note then, and let's say thank you to Matt for joining us for this conversation and for being so open and honest. It takes, like I said, it takes a lot of courage to not only do what you've done, but to also sit here with us and share your thoughts. So we really appreciate you.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Yes, thank you, Matt. Like we always do, we wanted to finish this episode with a quote. This one is from Viktor Frankl. When we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves. Thank you for listening to this episode. I wanted to share some important information before we let you go. While this podcast will give you strategies to use in your life, it is certainly not a replacement for attending therapy or seeking your own support. There will always be limits to what we can do on our own when it comes to mental health. And while we can give you tools and strategies, we know that they will not always work for everyone. There is value in telling your story and being heard. If you have tried the strategies we discussed and you're still feeling stuck, please reach out to us at Simply Counseling Services. Visit our website at www.simplycounselingservices.com for the services we offer and to learn about the other services that are free. You can also submit your topic ideas for this podcast on this website as well. Thank you again for joining us, and we are looking forward to our next time together. Take care of yourself.